Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, the 24th of May, 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. With me in the studio, Patrick Henningsen. Welcome, Patrick.
Great. Nice to be here, Mike.
Okay, well, let's get straight into it because yesterday, some pretty horrendous bomb attacks in Syria. And the Wall Street Journal here describing it as follows. They say, series of bombs in Syria hit Assad's strongholds, killing dozens. They say suicide bombers targeted 2 cities, killing dozens, and indicating Islamic State is expanding. A string of explosions claimed by Islamic State rocked 2 provinces in western Syria on Monday, killing dozens of people and indicating that the extremist group is expanding its reach into new territory, even as it loses ground elsewhere. They say suicide and car bombs struck bus stations, a hospital, a utilities building in the capital of Tartus province and in Latakia province, both in the heartland of President Bashar al-Assad's ruling Alawite minority. So there's the first major lie, Patrick, because this is in fact mostly a Sunni region and full of refugees from all parts of Syria, so all kinds of groupings within that population.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands or millions of people that have taken refuge in the real safe zone, which is the government-held area. So this is what the media in the West has been doing quite determinedly for many years now, is trying to paint the Syrian government as illegitimate within its own borders. So they're Assad this, Assad that, Assad's army, Assad's forces. So this is a good example of mainstream media and our governments coordinating to gaslight the population.
Absolutely.
Just to drown out any other counter rational arguments and to completely dominate and frame this story in Syria to be something that it isn't, quite frankly. If you're there on the ground and the reports that we're getting, we had an interview over the weekend on the Sunday Wire radio show. That was from on the ground in Syria. That was vastly different picture, Mike.
Absolutely. That was a heartrending interview, and if anybody hasn't seen or listened to the Sunday Wire yet, you really need to listen to that. That was in the second hour of the program, right?
Right. Yeah. So we can talk all we want in our newspapers, and Rupert Murdoch's newspapers and television networks and the BBC and everybody else can frame this, CNN, all of them can frame this any way they want, but the reality on the ground is nothing near what we're being told in the West. This is one of the greatest operations of propaganda in the history of modern times. Right.
Now, I've singled out the Wall Street Journal here, but of course, this equally applies to most of the other, in fact, all of the other mainstream outlets. So Wall Street Journal absolutely deserves this criticism, but so do the rest. The article went on to say, in an official communique, Islamic State claimed responsibility for the attacks and said they were carried out by a newly created division, the Coastal Province. And the point that Vanessa Beeley was making to us this morning is that this is cover for Ahrar al-Sham. This is a group which is a terrorist group, but they are not designated terrorists by the Western so-called authorities, by Britain and the United States. And so, as we were pointing out last week, they're effectively being used as human shields for the real terrorists.
Sure. So most of the media coverage by this, Mike, is a complete lie. So they've attributed all this string of suicide bombings, car bombings, terrorist attacks to ISIS, when in fact I believe Ahrar al-Sham had initially taken credit for it, and the reports that we've been getting on the ground from Tartus and Latakia have confirmed that it is Ahrar al-Sham.
Yeah.
So, and meanwhile, the U.S. State Department and its allies are trying to protect this Ahrar al-Sham, saying that, well, they're not quite a terrorist group, so we don't want to put them in the same category as Al-Qaeda in Syria or ISIS. And they're speaking at the UN. So this is a bona fide mass murdering terrorist group given representation at the United Nations. What else is it? I mean, we're not wrong, actually.
No.
So
in order to give them further cover, they we create a new group, the Coastal Province.
A new brand, a new ISIS offshoot.
Yes.
So it's amazing how these brands are rolled out every few weeks. So
it's like McDonald's, isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredible. The Coastal Province. This is sort of Province. Like I forgot, the Khorasan Group. That was a popular brand that was sort of floated by the U.S. State Department and U.S. media last year around March 2015. The Khorasan Group. It turns out the Khorasan Group is fictional. It didn't exist. So this is a total creation of our Western intelligence agencies feeding information to the mainstream media, who will unquestionably run with the story based on their sources. So the lies continue. They'll keep at it until they get what they want in the end, which I'm not quite sure what that is, besides a collapsed nation state of Syria and maybe a million more people dead by this time next year. Is this what our coalition wants, I guess? Seems like it.
Lottie in the chat box is saying, how many types of terrorists do we have now? We've only got one type of terrorist. They are epitomized by David Cameron and Barack Obama. That's the only type of terrorist that we have on this planet. The rest are only doing their bidding.
And I'm going to add too, Mike. We can move on, but by calling it Assad's stronghold, ignoring the fact that there are real people living there, they're dehumanizing the hundreds of dead people, and this is the job that our media is doing. They're dehumanizing these people. If this happened in Paris or Brussels, if one person died in Europe, everyone would be changing their Facebook profiles with a French flag on it. But because it happened in Syria, in a government-held area, all these hundreds of people who've died, who've been maimed, who've had body parts blown off, they mean nothing. They're worthless. They might as well have been, I don't know, just non-humans, basically. This is the message that's being reinforced by Western media coverage on this issue.
Well, let's have a look at some of the aftermath. So a couple of images probably you won't see in the mainstream press. We have the fire brigade there. I wonder if these first responders are getting the help of the London Fire Brigade. I suspect not. What you'll notice in these images is there are no white helmets.
These are real victims. If you notice the difference between these pictures that you're showing us here, Mike, and the white helmet propaganda marketing photos for all their campaigns, with the perfectly framed baby, with the light perfect and the dust on the face and the blood dripping down of the woman on the side, absolutely picture perfect.
Staged.
Theatrical photos. And this is a real photo. Okay, this is what a real bomb attack, terrorist attack looks like.
Yeah.
These are real people, real victims. It's not marketing swag from this so-called NGO. Well,
look, you have changed your Facebook page today.
Yeah, I just had an idea last night. When anything happens in Europe, it's Je suis Charlie or Je suis something.
Yeah.
And these are 3 separate cities attacked. Collectively, I don't know how many people died. I don't know how many people are maimed or injured, but let's just say it was horrific. Okay. So I just changed my Facebook profile to Je suis Tartus, Je suis Latakia, Je suis Jablé. Because these are people too. These are humans too. So, if you support humanity, you should feel something whenever people are killed and maimed by a terrorist attack, not just because they happen to be in an EU country or in the United States.
Yeah.
It's equally as devastating, and it carries on for generations.
Absolutely. Now, we mentioned how various terrorist groupings are being protected, and really this is indicative of the protection that they're getting. So Kerry urged Lavrov to press for an end for the bombing of the Syrian opposition. And of course, when we see the words opposition or the word opposition in the press, we're talking about terrorists. And the France 24 article here says the United States urged Russia on Monday to press Syria to stop bombing opposition forces and civilians in Aleppo. Of course, they're bombing terrorist groups, Al-Nusra Front, mainly in Aleppo. State departments, this is according to the State Department, they said Russia has a special responsibility in this regard to press the regime to end its offensive attacks and strikes immediately allow relief supplies as determined solely by the UN to reach all in need and to comply completely with the cessation of hostilities. Well, here we go. RT reporting the Russian Ministry of Defense making the point that al-Nusra is assembling a 6,000 attack force in Aleppo, and this is the grouping that Kerry wants protected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, clearly, when they say opposition in Syria, when the U.S. says the opposition, they mean the armed opposition. They mean the opposition being backed by the U.S. And the only opposition, and it's been reported many, many times, the al-Nusra Front, al-Qaeda in Syria, is the opposition. Even the lower tertiary level so-called rebel groups, they are mixed and intermingled and are under the command of al-Nusra. This is the most dominant, leading fighting force in this region, in this area, and they are a terrorist organization. And so is Ahrar al-Sham, and so is Shasha Islam, and so is the Army of Conquest, and any other groups that the U.S. State Department are trying to keep off of the terrorist list. And we have terrorists in the United Nations who are giving testimony in peace talks or have a seat at the table of peace negotiations. Foreign-backed mercenaries who've invaded the country of Syria, who have no business whatsoever in the politics or the destiny of this country, are being given representation by the United States, by Washington. Isn't this extraordinary? It's like upside down. White is black.
Absolutely, absolutely. So while Kerry's busy demanding that Russia stop Assad's forces from attacking terrorists in Aleppo, Russia, on the other hand, is really saying to the US, you need to come on board, coordinate strikes on Jabhat al-Nusra. And this was Sergei Shoigu, the defense minister, last Friday, saying, we're proposing to the United States as a co-chairman of the International Syria Support Group to start joint operations of the Russian Air Task Force and the US-led aviation from the 25th of May to plan and deliver strikes against Jabhat al-Nusra groups, illegal armed formations that are rejecting the ceasefire regime, and also against the caravans with weapons and ammunition, armed units illegally crossing the Syrian-Turkish border, and in these operations exclude strikes against civilian facilities in populated areas. And he went on to say that, however, if the United States doesn't want to do that, that Russia reserves the right to conduct unilateral strikes on detachments of international terrorist organizations and illegal armed units that do not join the regime of cessation of hostilities. So that's a pretty clear message from Russia. While the US is saying, please don't bomb our terrorists anymore, Russia is saying, no, you guys need to join with us in getting rid of this lot because they are thugs.
So this is a open, deliberate diplomatic move by Russia. This is diplomatic chess, and they're doing this in the full knowledge that the U.S. will not accept this offer.
Absolutely.
And this is diplomatic chess. This is designed to force a denial on the part of the United States to cooperate. So once again, we have Russia trying to work within international law, trying to work with international cooperation, doing it above the table, doing it legally, doing it openly, and then you have the United States doing a dirty war under the table, and in fact, in the wide open right now, but doing a dirty war. So again, it's separating Russia from the United States. One of these countries is in the right, and one of them is in the wrong. And Russia is not in the wrong.
No.
So we know who's in the wrong here. So the world sees this, Mike, and this is just another saga, just another episode of this seedy business being carried out by the coalition to back and push a proxy dirty war. This is no different than what happened in Central America in the 1980s. It's no different than any other dirty war that we've seen throughout history. In 10 years' time, we will look back, or 20 years' time, we'll look back at this war, and it will be on the list of dirty wars, right there with the Contras, right there with El Salvador, right there in Angola, and the list goes on and on and on. Chile. and endless.
You have to wonder how many times the same operation has to be run before people get the message.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this a piece of good news, Patrick? Because the account has been suspended, and whose account is it? Well, it is none other than the Syrian Observatory on Human Rights. This little, what do you call them?
This is an NGO, which is based out of a flat in Coventry. And it's the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. So this is where the British government and the U.S. State Department and the UN get the data which they want from Syria in terms of death tolls and people killed by the regime, quote unquote.
Yeah. It's
being supplied by one man who I believe gets quite a lot of money from the EU in terms of funding from research that I think we presented this before. But his name is Osama Suleiman. But that's his real name. His stage name is Rami Abdul Rahman. And so in the media and the BBC and everybody will refer to him by his stage name, even though his real name is Osama Suleiman. So once again, it's an actor with a stage name, gallivanting around, masquerading as an NGO.
Yeah.
And it's very partisan, because if you're getting funding from the EU, and the EU's got sanctions against Syria, for no reason, really, and you're meeting in the Foreign Office. This is Suleiman coming out of the Foreign Office, probably meeting with William Hague.
I think that was about the time William Hague was Foreign Secretary.
That's right. So hardly nonpartisan. This is working with the British government, who are actively trying to undermine the nation and state of Syria by building a shadow state through all these various NGOs, which we covered on this program.
Now, normally we wouldn't worry too much when we see an account suspended signed, because that usually means somebody hasn't paid the bill. They usually pay the bill and it's back up again within a few minutes. But in fact, in this case, that website's been down for 2 days now. So that's why we're raising it. We're wondering what's going on. Has Mr. Rahman / Suleiman decided that enough's enough?
Enough, yeah.
Very interesting.
He is being used as well, and he has a reason why he does what he does.
Yeah.
But he's being used by the governments that are cherry picking the data, in many cases the uncorroborated false data that he's probably putting forth as data from the Syrian conflict.
Yes.
Which they call a Syrian civil war, which is anything but civil.
Absolutely. So, it's not a civil war.
Yeah.
I think we were saying back in 2011, 2012 was a proxy war, Patrick.
I think so. I remember saying that. 2012. Yeah.
Right. So of course, Syria is not the only place there's trouble. This is an American general, Air Force General Herbert Hawk Carlisle. He leads Air Combat Command, and he was giving an interview to USA Today here. And he's saying, our concern is a resurgent Russia and a very, very aggressive China. Very aggressive, he said. He said both countries are intent on expanding their spheres of influence. How many times do they have to, are they going to repeat this rhetoric? It's such a clear lie that China, the only expansion of China's sphere of influence is the amount of investment that it's doing in infrastructure projects around the world, while in the meantime the USA and NATO stick their guns right up against their borders.
Well, if you got a problem, this is an American general, right?
Right.
So if an American has a problem with China's spheres of influence, if you want to look at the scale and scope of China's sphere of influence in the United States, just go walk into any department store in the United States and have a look around and count how many goods on the shelves of every single retail outlet in the United States that's not made in China, and you will have a very low number.
Yeah.
That'll give you the scale of China's sphere of influence in the United States. And who's the biggest purchaser of U.S. Treasury T-bills over the last decade, 2 decades? It has to be China, holding the U.S. dollar in the palm of its hand. In fact, subsidizing the U.S. dollar in a way, keeping it from collapsing. So we want to talk about spheres of influence. I think China's sphere of influence is already completely pervasive inside the United States.
Right. So Carlisle went on to say their intent is to get us, not to be there, and he's talking about the recent issues of the United States driving boats up to into Chinese waters and overflying Chinese airspace, so that the influence of those in international spaces is controlled only by them. My belief is that we cannot allow this to happen. We have to continue to operate legally in international airspace and international waterways. We have to continue to call them out when they're being aggressive and unsafe. And he said any accident that occurs while the US military is playing cat and mouse with Russian or Chinese forces could escalate into a real fight. Sorry, this is Lauren Thompson, who's a defense consultant. And he said if it does, American victory is not assured because US forces are operating thousands of miles from home, and the other side is near its main bases. So anyway, in response to Carlisle's comments about the danger of Russia and China, I apologize. I haven't put the name credit on this one. I do apologize for that. This is Konstantin Kosachev, who's chairman of the Russian Federation Council's International Affairs Committee. So he's a Russian senator, and he has said the very fact that some other country is resurgent already represents a cause of concern for the Pentagon, though we can probably be glad about such compliment coming from an American. So he's absolutely sticking his fingers up at them, really, and saying, we'll take the compliment. You're worried about us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, in the eyes of the United States military intelligentsia and also the media pundits, many of them are media pundits. If Russia stayed in the same economically depressed position that it was during the immediate aftermath of the collapse of the Soviet Union, that would just be fine and dandy for all these military hawks. And so any country that's managed to limp its way out of the hole, which was dug by the international financial cartels, is then a resurgent power, and then must be tackled or headed off at the pass, so to speak. So all this is, Mike, is just gaming for the defense industry. The U.S. will not attack China ever directly. They have no business doing so, and if they did, it would be a mess.
It would be a massacre. They would be destroyed.
So it's just talk up the threat, talk up the North Korean threat, renew those contracts, get some more subs, get some more battleships, get some more missiles, new F-35s or whatever the latest military project is. This is all it is, Mike.
Yeah.
This is just a game, hyping up the threats globally, and the big ticket items is the Pacific. This is naval power, nuclear assets, and things like that. This is the big ticket items. What's going on in the Middle East is a proxy war right now. There's a lot of small arms, tow missiles, Stingers, maybe a few tanks, maybe some air support, but it's nothing like the aircraft carriers and all the things that will be stationed all around the Pacific Rim.
Okay, so we're looking at a Western financial collapse. We're going to support that by building up the arms industry to the heights we haven't seen for decades. Nonetheless, that's a pretty dangerous game to be playing.
Yeah, this is one of the things that has bankrupted the United States during the first part of the 21st century, and plunged it into debt. A couple of wars, Iraq, for instance. I don't know what the total bill on that, Mike, is, but I think it's probably somewhere upwards of $1 trillion, at least. But that's $1 trillion of profit for the defense industry. Yeah. But it's $1 trillion of debt for the U.S. public. So you can work out the equation there of who benefits.
Absolutely. Now, Philip Hammond has been pretty busy. Yesterday, almost nobody in the mainstream, in fact, I didn't see any mainstream articles on this at all, but Philip Hammond was at the EU foreign ministers meeting, and they were discussing, this was yesterday, they were discussing strategy for Syria and also for Iraq, and this comment is with regard to Iraq, and also migration. So he was there in Brussels, and they were focusing on the counter-Daesh strategy. Did you know we had one?
Counter-Daesh. Okay.
Yeah, and also Libya and migration. Of course, they're propping up this government, this so-called government in Libya.
Yeah, clearing Daesh out of the Euphrates Valley.
Yes. So his quote is, "We're seeing an increase in the capability of the Iraqi army and a growing self-confidence as they had success after success, and they are clearing Daesh out of the Euphrates Valley as well as preparing for the longer-term goal of an assault on Mosul." So it's perpetual war in many ways.
And what they, I don't know if it's a case, Mike, of these defense ministers or cabinet people, or in the U.S. or Britain or wherever, that they want to sound more sophisticated to the public or more intelligent. So they've dumped the term ISIS, and now they're saying Daesh or Daesh. Now there's 5 different pronunciations for Daesh. There's Daesh, which is more accurate. That's the Arabic one. Then there's, I think, David Cameron, Dash, and then there's Dash, and then there's Obama, which is Dash. So there's like 5. I mean, what is it? What exactly is it? It's an Arabic translation. There's no English word for it.
We've got 15 different words: IS, ISIS, ISIL, for a group that doesn't really exist, and we've got 15 different pronunciations of the other words. So they can't really get their branding terribly accurate.
Yeah, how are you going to defeat an enemy if you can't decide on what name it is? That was one of anyway, I don't want to get into Gaddafi, but
okay. Afghanistan then, because here's another perpetual war, and this is the New Republic here discussing Afghanistan, saying it has truly become the forever war. They're saying while President Obama hailed the drone strike execution of Taliban leader Mohammed Mansour as an important milestone, it's clear that something has shifted in the US's approach to the 14-year conflict. For one, it represents the first time that the US has attacked the Taliban's leadership's redoubt in Pakistan, with Mansour being targeted in the province, in a Pakistani province. By taking Mansour out, the US has thrust the Taliban's leadership into turmoil, opening the possibility of Sirajuddin Haqqani, an even fiercer enemy of the US and the Afghan government, could take control. So this goes on. Philip Hammond then was discussing this, particularly with regard to the Warsaw Summit in July, which is the NATO summit, of course. And he was saying the Warsaw Summit in July will be an important moment for the international community to recommit to supporting Afghanistan's security and stability. And Patrick, you were generous enough to give me a copy of Kitson's book, Gangs and Counter Gangs, the other day, and thank you very much for that. But I'll just also mention his other famous book, which is Low Intensity Operations, Subversion, Insurgency and Peacekeeping. And this is exactly what is in operation in Afghanistan at the moment, because, of course, what is really going on there is to protect the poppy crops, the opium crops. Let's just remind ourselves. Now, unfortunately, the latest version of the World Drug Report, the year 2001, is more or less dropping off the left-hand side of this graph. So this particular graph is a few years old. And the darkest green there at the bottom is the Afghani opium cultivation, and that's in hectares. And we've mentioned this many times, but let's just remind ourselves that when the Taliban was in control of Afghanistan in 2001, opium production was more or less obliterated, and you can see that very clearly on that graph. And since that time, it has only gone upwards. And with the exception of 1 or 2 bad harvests in the last few years, there have been record crops every single year. Here's another view of that. This is in terms of opium production itself. And Pat, the one of the points that I have consistently made on this subject is that in this country, in the United Kingdom, we have large acreage of British farmland going over to opium production because the NHS has a shortage of opium supply for opiates, for painkillers. And so we have this situation. It's so transparent that we have this situation in Afghanistan, which has got bumper opium crops every year. These opium crops are not being diverted into the health service, into any health, for any health use. They're only for heroin. And of course, that heroin production that money is being diverted through the banking system. It's helping to prop up the banking system, but it's finding its way into the United States in particular at the moment, where it, as we've mentioned in recent weeks, has become a problem not for the traditional ethnic groups in the United States, which have always had drugs problems, for what we can discuss the reasons for that, but are now right into the middle classes and white middle class populations in the United States. We're seeing people overdosing and committing suicide on drugs for economic reasons mainly, but we've got a major heroin epidemic in the United States. This is the reason why Afghanistan continues to be a low-intensity operation, as Kitson would have put it.
And I want to go back to that New Republic article. Just go back a couple of slides now. Let me just quickly comment on this. So this is the voice of the fake left in America. This is the Washington D establishment's little left-wing rag. It's very similar to Foreign Policy magazine. Doesn't really get too deep. And they're saying, ooh, something has shifted in Afghanistan. They've been saying something has shifted every year since 2003, okay? Nothing has shifted in Afghanistan. This is an open-ended occupation. This is a cash cow for the military-industrial complex. This is also subduing the country of Afghanistan, and the Taliban got an award from the United Nations for basically wiping out the poppy crops and stuff in 2000 or 2001. They got that award in Washington, D.C., and then a year and a half later, the country was being decimated. So you have two cartels. You have the drug cartel, which is profiting off the heroin trade, flooding our streets with cheap drugs. And then you have all these drug addicts, and then they go through the NHS and to get their methadone or whatever the pill is of the day, opiate in some cases. So then they're profiting off these addicts a second time. There's another cartel. That's the corporate cartel. So you have the illegal cartel and the two drug cartels profiting twice off the victims. And if you remember, in this country, heroin was so expensive in the late 90s that it was almost disappearing from the scene.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, as if by magic, after 9/11, as the production ramped up, the price dropped, and now we have an epidemic. And all the politicians are scratching their heads saying, wow, how did that happen? We just explained how it happened. So the numbers don't lie, Mike. The data doesn't lie.
Absolutely. Now, Alex in the chat box is asking, where is the British opium crop really ending up? 100% bought by the NHS. This is a very good question, Alex, because when I asked the Home Office about this, it turns out that there is no requirement for any farmer who wants to grow opium in this country to obtain any kind of license for that. So this is the same type of these are opium poppies that are being grown in this country. There's no tracking of how much acreage there is. There's no you can grow opium crops in this country with as much freedom as you can grow wheat or corn.
So for the heroin industry, we could have a domestic heroin industry, right?
So that's absolutely right. So Alex is asking, where is this opium going? I don't think anybody has an answer for that. The official excuse is it's used for the NHS.
And meanwhile, if you want to grow cannabis, forget about cannabis, Mike. If you want to grow hemp, for industrial hemp reasons, the amount of licensing, the amount of regulations is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But yet, if you want to get into the heroin business, under the table, no problem.
Yes. Okay, Pat, what's going on in Hungary?
Well, this is interesting. So Viktor Orbán, Hungarian leader, nemesis of the West, of Brussels. He's one of the first European leaders or Eastern European leaders to come out and really criticize the narrative, the mainstream narrative of the migrant crisis. So recently, I think Bill Clinton has made derogatory remarks about the Hungarian leader and his views on immigration in Europe. And Orbán basically hit out in his defense. And I believe Clinton made the comment about Poland as well. I think there's a ruling conservative government right now in Poland, and they also have criticized the mainstream narrative on the migrant crisis. So he's basically come out and called out George Soros as the key person. This is the Hungarian leader calling out George Soros as the person who has turned the West, the left-wing intelligentsia, the mainstream left, into pro-migration stance. Okay, this is what we were talking about at AV7 in my workshop, which was information warfare. And this is exactly a perfect case study. You take a group of people in the West and you find issues that you can use to subdivide this group. This is an incredible example of this. So you can't get any better than this. So I think he's right. George Soros is one of the architects. He's funding MoveOn.org, the Democratic Party, the White Helmets, every single thing through the Open Society Institute that you can possibly imagine. So I think Orbán's correct in that criticism.
Okay, well, look, just before we move on, I just want to say that if anybody that isn't a member of the UK column, if you like what we're doing, please do subscribe. Help us do this more, do it better. We have lots of plans. We have a new format program coming out imminently. And we want to do much more of that and some other things. So if you can afford, or you can help us financially, that would be fantastic. And you've just launched a new membership.
We have. Thanks for mentioning it. 21 Wire TV. We've launched a new website, 21wire.tv. This is the beginnings of a beta of a new membership site. And like yourself, we're trying really hard to roll out new and improved content, a new podcast for members only, and newsletter private for members. And a lot of other benefits as well, online shop. So we're trying to take things to the next level. So, we need people's support to do that, and so the ZK column. Yeah. But we can do a lot together, and I think this new program that Mike is talking about, this will be coming out soon. Yeah. This will give you a taste of what we can do together when we put our heads together.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, I have to admit, Pat, when we mentioned this story last week, almost a couple of hours after the program, suddenly there were claims that bits had been found floating around the ocean. It is staggering that yet again this aircraft, or an aircraft, has just disappeared, has not been found. Allegedly some bits have been found. There's arguments between the Egyptians and the Greeks about what happened. Bits have been found. Now we're saying that no body parts have been found. There's human remains, but they're not big enough to actually be identified as a head or an arm or anything like that. So now they're suggesting that perhaps there was a bomb on board, whereas other people are saying, well, that absolutely that was not the case. How can we be? And the black boxes have not been found yet. These things send out a ping whenever they're involved in an accident. What's going on here? Do we think perhaps this aircraft is sitting in a hangar somewhere?
Well, let's be logical about this. Let's use just basic deductive reasoning. The Mediterranean is not exactly the biggest body of water on the planet. It's actually one of the most shallow bodies of water for its size. So much so, I think one of our colleagues in the office pointed out that during the war, it was no good for submarines because this visibility was too good down to the bottom from the air. So we have all the satellite technology, we have the search and rescue technology, and a plane disappears out of thin air. The odds of this, Mike, in the water is probably very low. Yeah. We're talking 1 to 1 million or 1 to 1 billion. Now, it's more likely then, Mike, if there's no remains floating in the water, or if the plane went missing off radar below the deck, maybe 500 feet, that it would have landed in a nearby location. So what is in the catchment area of the last known position of this commercial airliner? What countries could it be? There's not a whole lot.
No, well, what have we got? Well, I suppose it could have gone to Libya, could have gone to Israel, could have gone to
Cyprus,
Israel,
probably Israel,
Turkey, Greece.
Yeah, Turkey, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Greek island, perhaps. Malta. I don't know. So there's not a lot.
Not a lot. Now, just to clarify, Tam in the chat box saying that RT are reporting the explosions. Actually, what's being reported is that the fact that there are no large body parts floating around the sea, that there are human remains which are can't be identified in particular. What's being reported is an assumption that there were explosions. So there is no evidence at this point of explosions, and no evidence on the parts which they're saying they found from this aircraft. There's no evidence of any explosive residue.
Commercial airlines just tend to vanish a lot these days.
It is incredible.
It's a new phenomenon. It's only been since September 11, 2001 that airliners have vanished out of thin air. Yeah. So I don't know what the explanation is.
The United States then is going to apparently release its report on murder, is this? This is the people that have been killed in drone strikes and so on. And he is hailing this. He was. I do apologise, I'm looking at the wrong thing. So anyway, this is a long-awaited report, a bit like the 28 pages perhaps. Maybe this is a diversion from that, I don't know. They're preparing to publish this, showing how many militants and non-combatant civilians they have killed since 2009 as a result of drone strikes. The article here from the Star suggesting that perhaps independent investigators are going to be suggesting that these figures aren't necessarily accurate, and that may be the case. But what's the timing of this about, do you think?
I'm not sure, but I will tell you, without any reservation whatsoever, this president is working like hell for leather to shore up his legacy before he exits office in the new year. So this could be part of the housekeeping to patch up Obama's record, or to make him appear as a sort of a transparent president or something like this.
When did this notion of legacy begin? Because prior to sort of Tony Blair and George Bush, I don't really remember the idea of legacy being pushed so hard in the press. But maybe in the States it was before that.
Yeah, in the States it's always been an important thing in modern times. So you have books, you have best-selling books, you've got a film. I think at the end of George W. Bush's last term, they released a film called W. This was starring Josh Brolin. This was a legacy film. I can't remember who directed it. It might have been Oliver Stone. This was designed to create a soft landing for President Bush as he exited office in public relations terms. So Obama, you can absolutely be certain there'll be Obama the movie. It'll be either released before Christmas or it'll be released soon after the new year, and it would probably star someone like Will Smith playing Obama. If this is indeed the noises that I've heard coming out of Los Angeles, is that there's some sort of legacy film in the works. I don't know if that's going to happen. Maybe it's Sony Pictures or something like this. I'm not sure. I just heard like rattlings on the grapevine about it, but it's very important. Because no one wants to go down history like Richard Nixon. I think probably Richard Nixon is what spurred on the concept of legacy. No one wants to go down in flames in their post-presidential career the way Nixon did.
Okay, controversial subject now for many people. I received an email a few days ago, and it was about the Greater Isreal project, and it was really criticising you and me for not mentioning it when we were discussing Israel last week. So this is a global research article, a great article discussing the Greater Isreal project. They're describing it as a Zionist plan for the Middle East. If you're not aware of this, do have a look at the article. But at the end of the day, Pat, this is just one plan. So it's not even necessarily the definitive plan.
No, this is one plan which was drafted in the 1980s by an Israeli cabinet, a high-ranking cabinet official. Okay, but there is no proof that this plan is sitting on the desk of every single world leader, or even every single Israeli leader, or any Israeli leader for that matter. It is a plan, one of many plans, one of many visions. Just like Zbigniew Brzezinski has his blueprints, which he has drafted over the years for what the world should look like, what borders should look like. And this might be influential for world leaders in certain cadres, but maybe not in others. And this is also competing against other visions, what Russia might have as their vision for Eurasia, or even the Middle East, or the EU, or France, or Britain. And I think the problem with this is in a way a type of gaslighting, much like the concept of the New World Order, the NWO. Just because Henry Kissinger mentioned it and George Bush mumbled it in his speech doesn't mean that they have headquarters or offices, or they're not staffed up and there is no, where is the New World Order? It's a concept. It's an abstract concept. Is this what's ruling the world's agenda? I haven't seen any proof of this. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. But the problem is when you get obsessed when you kind of fall victim to gaslighting any one particular rabbit hole, you go blind to everything that is happening right in front of you today. And if you look at the Middle East, yes, Israel is a major thorn in the side of the Middle East for many, many decades. The creation of Israel and the program which is being run, which is Palestine. Okay, this is a huge problem for world peace. This is for international relations, for Arabs in the Middle East. But right now you have a country that's exerting more money and more military might and power right now than Israel, which is Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. And I don't see any of these people protesting against Saudi Arabia who are in the process of bombing Yemen back into the Stone Age, killing hundreds of thousands of people, displacing millions, who are funding and backing a terrorist insurgency in Syria, causing millions of refugees to besiege Europe and to destabilize the region and maybe parts of Europe as well, and the European political balance as well, is a direct result of this. So by obsessing about the Oded Yinon plan of the 1980s, you're probably, most likely, you're definitely missing what's going on right in front of your nose right now, today. What happened yesterday in Syria is a perfect example. I don't see anybody up in arms, hardly out in the alternative community. This as if they don't care what's happening in Syria, because everybody's just focused on their pet issue. And this is a problem.
This is a problem, and it's very hard to criticize the mainstream media for having a blinkered view of the world or not covering certain issues. If we aren't prepared to challenge ourselves every single day, is what I believe right. I worry that some people come to your site or our site with a preconceived worldview that they want validated, and really, quite the opposite should be what's happening. Everything we say, everything we write should be challenged, and everything that the mainstream media writes should be challenged, and we shouldn't be coming to this every day with a preconceived idea that because X has happened, that means that Y is going to happen.
The fact of the matter is, if you're sitting in the UK or you're sitting in the United States, your governments are selling arms, are selling weapons, and our firms are profiting off the sale of arms to a country like Saudi Arabia, who are using it in an illegal war of aggression and to back terrorist groups that are ruining whole parts of the region. Okay, now, mind you, we give a lot of money in the United States to Israel. We subsidize their defense military-industrial complex to the tune of approximately $4 billion per year in U.S. military aid. But that's important and that's crucial. But if you look at what's happening via Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates or Qatar, and these are all U.S. allies and clients of our defense industry, and what they're doing with those weapons, Mike, today, right now, not 20 years ago and not in the future. It's happening now, and I think people need to wake up and look at what's going on right now.
Okay, well, let's leave today on a lighter note. And Patrick, I'm not sure what this is, but I found this particular image particularly disturbing.
Okay, you want to advance to the next image. We don't want to show that. So this is one of the most famous things about Plymouth, a lot of people aren't aware, is Plymouth. I didn't know this until Plymouth is home to the gray mayonnaise, or the gray aioli, I think they call it.
Yeah.
So it is exactly the same color as
that building.
That building there.
Yeah.
And it looks like gray paint. And apparently this is like the top delicacy in Plymouth. I didn't know this. And I didn't see it on a Gordon Ramsay program. But so I sampled this the other night, and it's pretty incredible. It tastes like real aioli mayonnaise, but it looks like gray paint trimming. But
right.
That might not mean a lot to anybody.
Anyway,
if you come to Plymouth,
you'll
ask for the gray mayonnaise.
Yes, we'll take you there. If you come to visit the UK column, we will take you there for that delicacy if you want it. Well, look, Patrick, it's been great having you with us. You're away for a few days now.
Yeah.
When are you back in the country?
We'll be back hopefully next week, maybe late next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, super. Thank you very much for joining us. We will be back at the same time, 1 o'clock tomorrow. Hope to see you there, and have a great day. Thank you.